I moved into the neighborhood of Green Pines because I thought it would be peaceful. The lawns were neat, the houses well kept, the streets quiet. But what I didn't realize, what no realtor brochure ever warns you about, was the Homeowners Association, or as I came to call it, the neighborhood government nobody voted for. The trouble began the year after I bought my house. We had record rainfall that winter, and the runoff from the hill behind my property came dangerously close to flooding my backyard. I had grown up around construction, so I knew what I needed. A storm berm, a reinforced earth barrier to redirect floodwater. I consulted a licensed contractor, filed the correct county permits, and built it properly. It wasn't huge and certainly wasn't ugly. I landscaped it with native plants and gravel. Function and beauty. For a year, nothing happened. Then the HOA president, a woman named Carol, noticed. Carol had the type of personality that could find a problem with a rainbow. She knocked on my door one morning with a clipboard tucked under her arm, a tight smile on her face, and judgment radiating off her like heat off asphalt. "I noticed some unsanctioned landscaping in your yard," she said. I explained the berm. I explained the county permit. I even showed her the documents. She didn't care. "It disrupts the visual harmony of the neighborhood," she said, her eyes narrowing. "You'll need to remove it." I refused, politely at first, then firmly, then in writing. She fined me. I appealed. She escalated. I lawyered up. The HOA board held meetings about me. 3 of them, yet not once did they ask about the real reason for the berm, the storm drainage issue behind my home. Their final decision was absolute. Remove the storm berm within 30 days or face legal action and property lien. I fought it. I fought it hard. But HOA boards have a way of wearing you down. Endless letters. Threatening language. Legal fees stacking up like sandbags in a flood. In the end, I was forced to remove something that protected my home. Because it didn't match the neighborhood aesthetic. They celebrated. Carol walked by one morning just to smile at the bare slope behind my house. I felt sick. Because I knew something they refused to believe. Storm season was coming again. And this time, it was going to be worse. The summer passed quietly. But I could feel an unease settling in the back of my mind like a cloud that refuses to clear. The local news began reporting unusual weather patterns forming. Off the coast, storms with unpredictable intensity, fueled by warm ocean temperatures. Meteorologists kept using the same word. Unprecedented. But the HOA didn't listen to meteorologists. They listened to Carol. She continued parading around the neighborhood like some self-appointed guardian of property values. She even added a line in the monthly association newsletter. Residents are reminded to refrain from unauthorized structural landscaping that impacts community aesthetics. The sentence wasn't bolded, but it might as well have had my name beside it. Meanwhile, the bare slope behind my property sat naked, vulnerable, and eroding. Every light rainfall shaved away a little more earth. I documented everything: photos, timestamps, soil movement patterns. But evidence meant nothing to people who refused to understand the issue in the first place. Then, late September, the first warnings came in. A tropical storm was moving inland faster than expected, projected to collide with our region within 48 hours. I went to the emergency HOA meeting. It was packed, but not with concern, just gossip. Most of the room buzzed about patio furniture and loose mailboxes. When I stood and spoke, calm, factual, direct, about the flood direction, the hillside runoff, and the missing berm, Carol cut me off before I'd finished my second sentence. "Please refrain from fear-mongering," she said with her trademark tight-lipped, condescending half-smile. "Our community drainage system is perfectly adequate." I felt heat rise behind my eyes. "The drainage system was designed for average rainfall," I said. "This storm is projected to drop triple that. The berm I had was critical to redirecting runoff. Without it," she held up her hand, "the berm was unauthorized." A murmur of agreement swept through half the room. Unauthorized. Not unsafe. Not inconvenient. Just unauthorized. That's when I knew there was no saving them from themselves. I left the meeting early and went home to prepare. I sandbagged the side of my house. I reinforced the lower fence line. I set up pumps and emergency generators. I checked my gutters, my roof tiles, and my foundation seal. I worked through the night while most of the neighborhood slept comfortably, convinced nothing bad could happen in their perfect suburb. The sky turned black the following afternoon, long before the storm made landfall. Wind howled like a freight train in the trees. Power flickered. Lightning spidered across the sky in branching veins. And when the rain began, it didn't fall, it poured. Water came down in sheets, hammering the earth, pounding on roofs, racing down the hill. And the neighborhood was not ready. The storm intensified faster than anyone expected. By nightfall, the rain was a relentless roar, drowning out every other sound. The wind slammed against windows with enough force to make the glass tremble. I stood at my back door, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, and watched the hillside begin to move. Without the berm, there was nothing to hold the water back. A river formed where no river should ever be, carving straight down the slope. Mud, branches, and debris churned into a heavy brown torrent that slammed against the back of my yard. My sandbags held, but barely. The pumps kicked on, sputtering against the strain. I tightened my raincoat and stepped outside. This was the moment I had warned them about. I could feel it, not just in my bones, but in the trembling ground beneath my boots. Suddenly, I heard shouting. I ran to the front yard. Neighbors were in the street, standing ankle-deep in runoff that was now rushing toward the storm drains faster than they could swallow it. Flashlights flickered through the dark. The water was rising. Then I saw Carol. Her yard sat lower than mine. The water that used to be diverted by my berm was now collecting behind her house, pooling against her back door. She was outside, drenched, waving her arms frantically. "My house is flooding. Do something," she screamed. For a moment, I just stared. This was the exact scenario I had explained in emails, in meetings, in documents, over and over. She didn't want a solution. She wanted control, and now she was paying the price for it. But I'm not heartless. I yelled back through the storm, "Get your family out. Now. Don't stay in the house." She looked stunned, like she couldn't believe I was giving instructions instead of arguing. But the water behind her surged, and reality hit her hard. She grabbed her husband and kids, and they made for the driveway as the water continued to rise. One by one, other neighbors came running, panic spreading faster than the floodwater. Why is this happening? Where is all this water coming from? Why wasn't this prevented? I could have said it. I could have shouted it. I could have thrown their arrogance back in their faces. "Because you made me remove it." But I held my tongue. The storm was doing the talking for me. By midnight, several homes were taking on water. Basements were filling. Floors were soaked. Electrical systems were compromised. People were evacuating in the downpour. And while chaos swallowed the neighborhood, my home, protected by sandbags, pumps, preparation, and knowledge, stood firm. Exactly as the berm had once ensured. By morning, the storm had passed, but the neighborhood looked like a battlefield. Streets were covered in silt and debris. Lawns were torn up, fences broken, and driveways buried under mud carried down from the hill. The air smelled of wet earth and soaked wood, sharp, heavy, unmistakable. Neighbors wandered outside in silence. Some cried, some argued, others just stared, stunned by the damage. I stepped out of my house, exhausted but dry. My pumps had run all night, and the sandbags held just enough to keep the water from breaching the foundation. The place didn't escape untouched, but it survived, structurally intact. Safe. Carol's house did not. Water had poured into her living room, rising nearly a foot before tapering off. Furniture ruined. Flooring buckled. Drywall swollen. The damage would take months and thousands of dollars to repair. When she saw me, she approached slowly. No clipboard. No forced smile. Just someone who had finally been confronted with consequences. She refused to acknowledge until it was too late. "I didn't understand," she said quietly, voice strained. "I thought you were just refusing to follow the rules." I nodded. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound like I was kicking her when she was already down. She looked away, swallowing hard. A few hours later, the county emergency services arrived to assess the neighborhood. When they asked about the drainage pattern, I handed them the documentation I had collected, photos, soil retention analysis, rainfall projections, and the original berm design permit. The lead inspector raised his eyebrows. "You had a flood barrier here?" "Yes," I said, "until the HOA ordered me to remove it." He exhaled through his teeth, a long, low, irritated sound. "This was preventable," he said. Word spread quickly, and suddenly, everyone remembered how loudly Carol had insisted the berm was unauthorized. Homeowners, who once nodded in agreement now looked at her with quiet, simmering resentment. The HOA board tried to distance themselves. Meetings were called. Voices were raised. And then came the vote. The board was dissolved. Carol resigned before they could remove her. In the weeks that followed, neighbors approached me differently. They asked for advice. They asked what could be done to prevent this from happening again. And together, this time with cooperation, not control, we built a new, stronger berm system behind multiple homes. It wasn't about aesthetics anymore. It was about understanding something they should have realized long ago. Sometimes rules protect appearances, but knowledge protects lives. The storm proved everything I had tried to say. And in the end, my house stood as the evidence.